Very privileged to have such a great panel here joining me tonight. The clients that have turned up, we've got clients that are new clients, we've got clients that have been with us for 20 plus years, likes of JMac, BMD, T, some really big clients that have backed us for 20 plus years, and there's heaps more clients that have been here for that period as well as some great new clients that have come on board recently. We've got our executive team here that's through the different brands, sort of the 13 different brands that represent the people in business. So feel free to say g'day and learn about the business. There's very different parts of the business servicing a lot of different areas, but really appreciate you coming along. I'll do a very quick intro to Les, Michael and Kiri because everyone would have seen their credentials on the invite in, but Les, obviously current Queensland Reds coach, moving into the Wallabies coaching gig very shortly, and obviously has a great rugby league career, followed by some unbelievable work that he did over in Ireland with the teams over there to take them to the national titles. Michael stepping in as the Raw coach. Brilliant win on the weekend, their first win. I think it's been 16 years that they've won the first game at home, or roughly that, which is awesome. Really aggressive play, probably a little bit too aggressive by his son that got a red card, but great to see that aggression in the Raw team and having a win. Obviously coached and played internationally and overseas, which is a common theme with the panel here. And then Kiri represented New Zealand in her younger years and has taken control of the Firebirds now and has had a sterling career herself, both on the coaching and on the netball court. So real privilege to have you all up here, and hopefully we can have some key learnings from it. We're going to be talking about culture, about development and teams, but I might just kick it off first and to the whole panel. But culture, how do you manage the team culture when it starts to go sour, and what do you do to turn that around? And probably to yourself first, Michael, if that's all right.
Thank you very much for the welcome, and it's a privilege really to be here with these coaches. The question is a very good question. What I learned along the way is that if you leave it to when it goes sour, it's too late. And that's what we were just talking about before. So what I've learned along the way and what I've wanted to put in place at the Raw is that we are very purposeful about how we build our culture from day one, from the very first minute, so that we are driving it every day, every single day, through our behaviours off the pitch, but also on the pitch through our methodology and the way we want to play. It's not something you can leave to chance, and it's not something that, like I said before to Les, that, when it goes sour and you lose 3 games, that you say, oh, now it's time to go and play paintball. It's too late. It's much too late. So it's all about communicating the right message every day, and it comes from, I can go in a little bit deeper with this, comes from knowing who you are, knowing the standards you want in that place, in your environment, and just being who you are and living those values that you've put in place for the place to understand. And it's interesting though, we can talk about these words and the values. So for me, for example, it's about passion, attitude. And when I mean attitude, now you can define attitude in many ways in here. Everyone will define it in different ways. I look at it as a positive person that looks to compete, that looks to get better every day. I look at team first. So it's passion, attitude, team first, and hard work, which is a given. So for me, I know that when the players will look at me every day, they're going to see that. There's no problem with that. They'll find the passion, they'll see the competitor, they'll see me putting team first, and I'll be working harder than anyone.
And you've talked about raising the energy, raising the intensity, when you've discussed it previously. Can you go into sort of a bit more depth on that with the team?
Look, when I was first told about coming to the Raw and I watched the games and I saw them play, there's one thing in me is going to be intensity, and I believe in intensity. So it comes from my philosophy of being proactive and attacking and going to get what you want. So whether you're with the ball and you're going to attack to penetrate and score goals, create opportunities to score goals, or you haven't got the ball, you're going to attack and be aggressive to win it back. I believe in life, that's how I am as well. I'm on the front foot and I'll go and get what I want. So when I'm watching them, I'm seeing a team that is, okay, playing, but to me, look like they'll participate. I don't participate. If I'm going to do something, I do it 100%. Why? Because I'm passionate. I love what I do. I'm going to give 100%. I'm a competitor. My attitude, I put team first. So if my teammate can't win that ball, I'll win it for him. And I'll work bloody hard to win a game, like we did on the weekend when we went down to 10 men. That belief for the players has to come out of who we are as leaders as well, that they see that's authentic and that's who we are. And that's what we're going to measure their performance by. The rest, as Les said before to me, the X and O's, the tactics and all this sort of stuff. Yeah, I was lost in that sort of stuff when I was coaching as a young coach. It was all about, how can I be the next Guardiola? But it all comes down to this stuff. It comes down to the environment. It comes down to your culture. It comes down to who you are, your beliefs and your standards, and setting that across the board. And when I looked at it, at Raw, we had to bring the Raw back into Brisbane because there was no Raw. It was just passive. They were just playing to play. No, we have to play to win. And I know sometimes as a coach, it's difficult to come out and say, we're going to win the championship, because you're putting a lot of pressure. But at the same time, if we're going to put a vision in place for the players, which is very important when you're building a culture, and you're going to say, this is what we're dreaming of, this is what we want to achieve. If you're not really going to believe that, why are you saying it? How are you going to work hard for it? So why not put it out there and stop hiding behind, we're going to look to play well, we're going to look to try and win some games. No, let's aim to win every game. And I know that some games, it's going to be challenging, but I want that mindset, that when you step into the arena every single day, you're going to give 100% and you're going to play to win. And that's the mindset I want to change. And that intensity comes not only a physical intensity, but an intensity here, the cognitive of making good decisions and being intense with the performer you want to be.
Yeah, great. And Kiri, we had a chat over a rosé earlier. It's been a pretty tough season for the Firebirds. You've come in and you're really having to re-sculpt that culture and some, you had some really good insights about, being able to, you have people that have an impact on the culture and being able to bring in different, depending on where you are in your makeup.
So sadly, when you Google the Firebirds, the first thing that you'll read media-wise is that there have been some issues at the club in terms of culture, rightly or wrongly. I think the first thing for me when I got this job was to make sure that Netball Queensland, who I work for, their values aligned with my values, and they do. So I felt really comfortable about what I was coming in to do, because I was basically being tasked to turn the ship around and sail it in another direction. We've turned the ship around. We're not quite sailing with the full wind in our sails. We didn't get as many wins as we wanted to get this year. But I talked to the guys when they were talking to me about coming on this panel that establishing a really good culture is not easy. And it is a build. You don't get everything right. You try and set up your foundation in the first year, and then the goal is to build. So the key for me is the passion and all those things. Those are the values that the Raw are going to emulate when they're out there on the field. And that's the thing that you have to get with your teams, is an agreement on what those values are, because you're dealing with a group of people whose values will all be different, but there will be some common ground. You have to find the common ground, and then you have to talk about the behaviours and the actions that match up to those values. So it's all very well writing the words on the wall, but what does it actually mean in my day-to-day as I show up to every training, every game, every meeting, all of those things. So you build that with your teams, you find the common ground. So a lesson I learned early in my coaching career was I had this team and we had about 8 values. If I pulled a player out of that group and said, what are our 8 values, she will remember the 3 that she resonates with, not the 8. And so she's falling apart on 5 others. So a key for me has always been you narrow it down, you find the critical few, and then you all agree, no matter what my other values are, those are the 3 or 4 that I'm going to nail. So we're in our establishment year. We've sorted a lot of that stuff out. I think it's really important to also realise that when you're establishing a culture for the first time, if that's where you're at, we'd all be millionaires because we'd all be able to go, yep, I don't want her, I want her, I want her, I don't want her. It's hard because people tell you what you want to hear a lot of the time, but their behaviour will tell you whether or not they stay. And I think in sport, as ruthless as it is, I can end somebody's contract in a year if they're not living up to those values. For me, values are critical. You have to be good at your job on the court, but you also have to fit in with what we're doing here as a group. And because we're establishing, I've been really hard on that this year. I don't want you to read into that around recruitments that we've made from a playing point of view, because I have to say that the 10 that we had this year lived those values 100%, and anyone that we didn't re-contract, it's got nothing to do with their ability to live our values. It's a whole other, there's all sorts of things that go into contracting. But you are the standard that you walk past. So you can't just be good in yourself. You also have to call out stuff or notice or have a discussion about stuff that other people are doing that don't fit in. Otherwise, it's all worth nothing. So you either live it or you don't. And if you don't, then there's possibly going to be consequences from either a performance point of view as a team or a career point of view. That's how I roll.
And Kiri, can you quickly just touch on, I mean, you've spoken to myself about it before, is around, you can afford to have that one rebel that could blow up the show if you've got a very strong culture, but you're obviously in the building stage, so how's that all work?
Yeah, so you can bring people in and you can help them to understand how their behaviour impacts on other people. So I worked with a team prior to coming to the Firebirds. I was with a team for 7 years. We could afford in that culture, because we'd set our values and our standards really clearly, we could afford to get the renegade in and they could blow stuff up. But we knew we could put it all back together with them. I think for where I'm at the moment with the Firebirds, we're still establishing our foundation. We can't actually withstand too many renegades blowing us apart, because we're still finding ourselves and still really ingraining who we are and how we want to be out there. So I think definitely you can get that hugely talented recruit that you really, really want and mould them to showcase their talent, let them express themselves how they want to express themselves on the pitch for us. But it has to be the right time and the right place for the team, is my experience.
Thanks. And Les, building that trust, obviously you've done a great job with the Reds, coming in and staying with them, but you're about to start a new journey. How do you build that rapport with the Wallabies team? They're on a bit of a roll. There seems to be a good following back against the rugby. How do you build that rapport coming in day one while they've got that momentum?
Yeah, thank you first for being here. Really impressive how you guys represent yourself in those in that culture space. I think it'll come back to that place for mine. I'm a good mate of Joe's, Joe Schmidt, who, for those who don't know, is the current coach. I've coached around 40 test matches together. We have very similar values and how we look at the game overall. So there is a transition period that's going to be a lot more understood by the players. If I was a totally different coach coming in, it'd just change it totally and everyone wonder where they are. So there's some nice things in place already. In terms of, for myself to come in, it's not there to try and reinvent the wheel, but that they need to know me and I need to know them. And one of the benefits I do have, I'll have probably a third of the team, I'd reckon, Steve, would be Wallabies in that Wallaby group, and they play for the Reds at the moment. And I've been in and out of camp a few times, so I've already broken the ice in a lot of ways. However, they're going to know very quickly what I value in a culture. And one of the things that is important that it is about people. And if I can be quite candid, I will make sure that I get to the nitty-gritty of them understanding what part they play. I can tell them what I want them to do. I can hold a stick. It won't be about that in the cultures that I build. I will always begin with the person. Who are you? And I want you to bring who you are to the table. I'm not a coach that likes everyone to conform. I like to be able to have people that can express who they are, bring their personality. Our strength will be in our diversity, not conforming and not being your true self. It's a dangerous place to go in a footy team because people will go, uh-oh, which they did when I first came to the Reds. However, a good locker room, which is the heartbeat of a club, from mine, they know a line, and you know a line that you don't cross. So bring who you are, bring your personality. Be unafraid to show who you truly are as a person, because that'll be where you can be your best player in the 80 minutes. But there is a line that you don't cross, and we all understand that. You probably have that in business as well. You know there's a line you don't cross. It doesn't mean you'll be perfect either, but a good locker room and a good mate, a good teammate will say, hey, come on, mate, when that's what it's like. And those things are built from the values and the key principles that drive our play, which is all about alignment. And I'll do this a lot because I'm a big fan of alignment and understanding how we do things together. But the most important thing is that the players have been involved from day one about what those things are that matter to us in our locker room. The big thing I found when I also walked into the Reds, and I'll do this with the Wallabies, maybe some people have raised their eyebrows there and they haven't heard me say this yet, but the place had a wonderful group of people, built a wonderful culture that was there already to a degree. But there was something that was on the wall all the time. Penalties if you did something wrong. Heaps of policy. Heaps of don't do this. Make sure you don't do this. I stripped them away, and obviously there are things that you should not do on social media and certain things that we know where the line is. But I replaced that with something very, very simple. And if you can live like this in your culture, in my teams that I've worked with, we come down to a simple way to look at it. Whether I'm on the training paddock, with the coach, with other people in the organisation, whether I'm working with a stakeholder, a sponsor, whether I'm on the side of the pitch, signing autographs, working with fans, going to a school, whether I'm out with my mates having a drink on the piss, whatever I'm doing, I ask my boys to think of 3 key questions. They ask themselves this always and understand that when they make these choices, there's 3 things to think about. At all times, I represent myself. And today's player, today's athlete, they're a brand in a way. And do you want to hurt that? You know what I mean? Because that can be taken about very quickly in this modern era. So, at all times, you represent yourself. Second one, think. At all times, you represent your family. Do you want to let mum down, grandma, your daughter, your partner, your brother? At all times, can you make a decision that equals that? You won't let them down. And the last one is, at all times, you represent your teammate next to you and the jersey you wear at the time. And I think if you can keep policies and penalties off the wall and say, don't do, and say, can you live up to that and not let those things down? Now, you won't be perfect. I know that some things will happen, but good locker rooms and good cultures allow you to be human sometimes. But I do think those are the things that I will bring into the organisation there, and I want people to explore. I believe your real capacity to express under pressure in 80 minutes, you've got to allow people to be more of themselves, and that's just how I look at it.
Yeah, that's great. Michael, talking about consistency now and consistency in leadership, you 7 years over in Europe, coaching and playing. What were you, I suppose, what did you learn over there that you brought back to the Raw versus stuff here where you went, well, I'm now in the Australian environment, so I need to adapt to that market? So,
Oh, look, I think over time we always learn and improve, and we've got to be open-minded to always better ourselves. And when I look at when I first started as a coach, and I started here in Australia compared to who I am now and what I do now, there's a big difference. And I often smile and have a chuckle at how I dealt with some things, but that's just who I was back then and where I was at and how I saw the game. And over time, you learn and you see the human side of sport is so much more important than the tactics, the X and O's, and I'm going to be attacking, or I'm going to be defensive, or whatever. And you find that players are humans; they're not players. And all these sorts of things that we've been talking about are normal, but sometimes don't seem to be normal in a football club or whatever, in a sporting club. And it's just a lot of times it's about behaving and being normal like you would in your own environment, in your family environment or wherever. So what I learned is not what I learned, I think it's when you learn who you are and who you want to be seen as, because you're authentic, and that's who I am. Don't worry so much about the tactics. That's part of the knowledge that we need to have. But it's just being, this is who I am, and this is who I need to bring to the table and into the dressing room. And once they get to know you, like you mentioned, Les, they're going to get to know you, you're going to get to know them. Then being who you are and being authentic will drive the environment. And they'll very quickly understand who you are and what the standards are and what you expect from them every single day. And just driving that and being on top of that, I think has helped a lot in terms of the football that comes out and making the environment a lot better. And this year we've really been purposeful about culture, coming down to, it's not only about, this is going to be the training session we're doing on the Monday with periodisation. This is power, this is speed, this is endurance. And this is the methodology, and this is what we're going to coach, and this is the objective. Coming down to the detail of, this is the message in terms of maybe the word passion, and how we're going to show that, or hard work, and how we're going to show that, or what workshop are we going to work on today with the players to talk about something that is so relative and so important that it's not tactics, but it's got to do about attitude and how they define it. And you mentioned something really important about everyone's going to define it, or some people will represent a value, but they can't represent another. And what we did this season was, the very first day, I defined what I think those words are. The week later, we defined what everyone thought in general terms, or believed in general terms those words mean. But we took it down to the level of defining those 4 words within our game model, and what behaviours represent those words in our game model in terms of when we have to defend or when we have to attack or in transition. And that was a defining moment even for me to see how players were looking for certain behaviours within a game model to define those words. And that's what I probably learnt along the way in a long time being in Europe, where I was privileged enough to go and coach at Ajax as an assistant coach. We went in one of the most, with John Van Schip, the senior head coach who would take me with him everywhere. We went in one of the most terrible periods ever in their history. They were 18th on the ladder. In fact, when I was told I was going to Ajax, my son, the one that got the red card, he said, "Are you sure you want to go to Ajax?" And I said, "Who doesn't want to go to Ajax?" He said, "They're on the bottom of the ladder." And I said, "Turn the phone around, you're probably looking at it the wrong way, because they're never on the bottom of the ladder." But they were. And when you walked through that door, you could see, you felt it, you saw that, you felt the energy, why they were on the bottom of the ladder, and how quickly you had to turn that place around. So, it's what I did learn, and what I see still, like I sometimes I hear it in commentary, it's all about the style of football and what style are they playing. It's about the environment. And that's what I've really learned, because as a young coach, I focus a lot on the football.
Yeah, brilliant. Staying on that theme, Kiri, how do you manage it when you've got, a team that's lost some games or individuals that have lost games? How do you turn around the attitude and turn around their motivation from that side?
Before I answer that, I just wanted to pick up on something Michael said about authenticity. You know it yourself, you can smell BS a mile away. Athletes can smell it. Like they know if you're trying to be somebody who you're not. So I think in terms of coaching's all about people, and it's about building a relationship between me and you, or me and the next person. It's very difficult for an athlete to build a relationship with you if they don't trust you, because they don't know who they're going to get on any given day. So authenticity, I think, drives the relationship between you and your athlete, so they know how you're going to respond when you're not winning, when you're under pressure. There's a bit of an evenness around it. Yes, every now and then we like to surprise them with a bit of a spray or a little bit of a hurry up, but I think as long as you have that trust, you can work with them. And so in terms of the answer to the question around when a team's losing, because we lost 12 games in a row, how do we keep them motivated? It's bloody hard, actually. And we are all people who want to win. It was Les tonight, he said our favourite letter in the alphabet is a W. So the key for me this year has been process. So whether we win or we lose, the process stays the same. Now, we had a horrific game one day, and I had one of my senior players go, "We don't need to do a hot debrief. We all know that was just crap. Let's just move on." And I was like, well, hang on a minute. We need to know why it was crap, and we need to know how we're going to change that. So I think the thing for us was, one, maintaining our processes, continuing to debrief, plan, reset for the following week in exactly the same way. But also as a coach, I was really mindful of our attitude when we came into training. They're already feeling like crap. Yes, sometimes we do need to get on top of them, but you have to learn when those moments are and when you can get on top of them, and when they're already down in a hole, and sticking your hand on them and pushing them under is not actually going to do you any good. So we tried to highlight progress that we made. We actually made some great progress this year, even though it didn't come out as a W at the end of the season. We had players playing 20%. Our stats tell us they're playing 20% better than they were in previous years and previous seasons. We closed the gap. We have a 2-round competition. We closed the gap on every single opposition that we had. There are measures that you can take out if you are not winning the game. You can take some measures and highlight your positives, and then go after those positives and those strengths and make them even better. And that's how we ended up trying to, every week, keep some motivation in the group to carry on. I did have a moment with my analysts where I was like, right, cut every single mistake. We're going to show them how crap that's just not good enough. And he said to me, we want them to play with a little bit more confidence, and I don't think this is going to help them. He was absolutely right. I was having a moment. And that's the other thing. Us head coaches, everyone thinks that we've got all the answers. Our staff are really, really important to us, and their contributions to how we navigate difficult times. I think listening is really, really important, and making sure that we are open to other suggestions, which, to be fair, that was a pretty straightforward one, but I appreciated it at the time because it was the right thing to do.
Thanks, Kiri. Yeah.
If I may, there, Kiri, and what we're talking about, the environment, culture, and all these things that we all hold very dear as central. If we don't have that in place, I don't think anything else could happen. We understand that. And that's what comes with time and wisdom and all those things. And when you look at winning, it's a two-horse race. Only one team can win. And it's difficult to win. It's not easy to win. If you look at the notion of, why don't we go for that trophy? Brilliant. And I think that's an essential part of, getting through some of the fluffy stuff and all that. we all want to win, but in our competition, only one team of 12 or 11 now can win it. I don't know how many teams in your comp. Only one team can win that trophy. So when you win, and the W is the letter that we love the most, but what stands up and what's still succeeding when you don't get the W, when you don't get the trophy? Success in 2026 for the Reds, for example, we want the trophy. We're driving hard for that. But the last thing I want is to be, at the end of it, I win a trophy, but our environment and culture stinks. But if I don't have the trophy and that stands tall and that's the success still, that's the most important thing, I think. And if you can have the trophy and that is also there, that's beautiful. So when you're losing, you can lose your way, but when you are losing, because we all have those periods, is the culture, the environment, are your values and your standards, are the way that you operate together still stand up? Are my players still operating in a way that they're still trying to be their best? Are we still doing all the things that are part of the process? And it's important. So if we talk about winning and losing, I always believe win, yep, you get the scoreline, but you hope the values and the principles have stood up and been there as well. If we can get this trophy, that's what I want to be there as well. If we don't get it, this has to be there, and that's the measure of success that I look at. The bonus is the trophy in the end. That's how I see it.
Yeah, that's great, Les. Just to stay on that theme, Les, the Wallabies are coming into a home World Cup, which is going to be unbelievable for Australia and Brisbane and North as well. There's going to be a lot of scrutiny on the Wallabies coming into that, no doubt, and yourself. How do you block out that external noise that's obviously going to be coming thick and fast coming into a World Cup? And for the players mainly, how do you block it out so they can stay focused?
You just get more W's than losses, I think. Look, there's going to be heat. Well, rightly so. The public and the media, they have a part to play, and I'm a big believer that you must engage with them in a positive, optimistic way. That doesn't mean it won't turn against you at times, and by against I mean they're going to challenge in a way that makes you, well, probably more, in my book anyway, it's more my family that get upset about those things. I discern between proper media and proper public scrutiny away from what I would call the bloggers. And I look at it, I have a theory that, no, it's not a theory, it's a reality. Queensland, or Rugby Australia, the Wallabies, how many people in this country support the Wallabies? There's millions. How many people would read about us daily? How would many, monthly, daily, down? How many would engage with the website or a site to talk about the Wallabies? It goes from 1 million right down to how many people blog on a story. It goes down to about 50 or 70 people. And 50 or 7 people who might have a criticism or a take at my players, at my team or whatever, they're not going to influence me. You know, 0.000000001% of people's opinions that are people that have nothing better to do are not going to affect what I do with my team. So my view is we will stick to process. We will continue to extol the values and the principles that we run by internally. I'm a believer that if you get that right, the players will respond and say the right things in their way. I don't like to give my players a run sheet, only say this, only say that. I like them to be able to express who they are at the time. Therein lies a danger, but we're not perfect. It might fly out at times, but isn't that just being human? Isn't that allowing us to explore who we truly are and how we respond to those things? Let's not close it up. Let's know what we stand for. And if there is a hard time that we go through, we'll go through it. But so I don't want to be in a place where we close everyone out of the pace. We want to be able to be accessible in the right way, but there are principles at play in terms of not reacting to that 0.0020,000 to the 1% of people who have that criticism. We know what we're doing. We'll know when we're right or wrong. We know when we're not quite there. We'll know internally by the way that we operate. But it is important that people understand that we will always try to build an optimistic message. In my book, when I'm with the Wallabies, we'll always make sure that we understand people will look at us through the lens of that 80 minutes. That 80 minutes is what they see So if we can stand in our try line and defend and repel consistently enough, people will start to believe and understand that when we aren't quite right, that we are just human. But they'll also see an ambition built on passion, intent, a visceral, brutal approach to saying we will do whatever it takes to win, within the laws, obviously, and with the treating other humans the right way. But we will be driven, and they'll see that come through. The lens that people will judge us through is that 80 minutes. And from my book and the players that I've spoken to already in small ways, these guys are driven to inspire the nation. They want to inspire the nation. And the only place that anyone else gets to really see it is the 80 minutes. And every decision we make, everything that we talk about, everything we drive, and this is the mode that I'm working with RA and Phil and Dan and Peter Horn, who's the head of performance, is decisions that make the 80 minutes the best that we can do. And that comes from environment and all the other things that we've got to make around. So hopefully that people will see through the media in the way that we engage with it, that we'll be upfront, we'll be as frank and as we can be about where we are. We'll try to be human. I don't want us to be robots, but I'm not going to be influenced, and the players won't be by that little minuscule thing, but we will be real within ourselves.
Yeah, it's great to look at how small a percentage it is that's making the noise. Kiri, moving on to sort of leadership development, you sort of talked about your whole squad and different levels in the squad, but what traits, apart from pure talent, what traits do you look for in your players?
It's actually quite a simple question to answer. It's the players that can live the values and do it and lead others with them. I think that's what sets those players apart. We all can live the values every day, and we all can turn up, run hard, be the guy that makes the line every time. That's just a given in the environment, but it's the ones who help others to get to the line, whose performance doesn't drop because they are helping somebody else out on the court. They've got to be able to lead. I think this may be a netball thing or a New Zealand thing, but over in New Zealand I found that a lot of the captains and the leaders of those teams over there, they were more concerned with how to manage management. There became, we have players associations which have their role, and that's great, but it became their role to speak to the management about things that they weren't happy with to try and manage us. You've got to be able to lead and be inspirational on the field. Like I think everybody in the room, no matter what team sport you follow, there will be that one captain that that you can see them on the pitch. You know exactly what they will be inspirational. When the game is really, really tight, they are the guy that you rely on, gal, that you rely on to break the game apart. And so I think first and foremost, that's what I look for. And then they also have to be that person that leads the values. Yeah.
Yeah, great. And going on from that, Michael, when you bring a new player into the Raw, how do you get that cohesion? Like, how do you get them on the same track as everyone else?
When you're bringing in a player, and it's not only about the profile to suit the style of play that you want and the sort of player you want in that position, but from a personality and a character point of view, that they will fit those values. And if you see those values in them, you know that they will fit in the group. But what we put in place this year, and it might exist in other codes and in a lot of clubs, is that we do an induction that's controlled by the playing group. So we might have presented to the players and to our team in terms of, this is our vision, these are the values, that our foundations are going to guide our style of play to get us there. They saw that. We worked on that every day, but now every time someone new comes in, it's a leadership group that will deliver it to the new player. And when we hear them speak, it was really interesting to see it the first time, because I didn't know what to expect from them and what they're going to explain. How well are they going to explain the game model? How well are they going to explain the values? What are the standards and expectations? What's the vision we're trying to achieve? But when you see them describing it to the new players, then you feel really great as a coach. And you know that, they're not just saying it. You can see when they're believing it, because you know when it's BS, like you said. So that new player comes in, I think it's a hell of a lot stronger when his teammates and his colleagues are telling him what the expectations are and what we're all about, rather than just hearing it from me or the other coaching staff.
Yeah, great. And Les, we touched on briefly, when we were having a chat, it was about closing the gap, and I think it's a great analogy for both business and the sporting arena. Can you sort of touch on that and talk a bit about that gap close?
Yeah, certainly. So we now, in a rugby team, we have a squad. Usually, it depends what nation you're in and what competition you're in, but you've got probably your best group of players. But from 1 to 42 is our squad, but we also have another 8 to 12 very talented individuals in our senior academy that are involved as well. If you have a program that relies only on your best 15 being in, and the gap between that 15 and the last 15 is massive, there is a challenge, I think. Now, the challenge isn't just about the W's only. I think there's other things that come into play. So what we try to do is close the gap between player 1 and player 44, for example. How do we do that? And it's a really important thing. They are involved with the process of understanding, building the values. What does the values mean? They're not someone that comes in and you pick them in and say, oh, now come in and help us. They are involved from day one in that process. Also forging the key elements along with the key coaches, the game model that we have. They are involved with understanding how that works. Aligned with that is the coaches that coach them down below. They are involved intrinsically with how all those things as well. So it's not a surprise when they come in what these things are. So our academy, they don't drive totally different values. They will run our values and they will have certain little things that they will do that are personal to their team, but they understand what we're about. So player 44 to 50, they know how we work. So closing the gap, you've closed the gap by understanding how do I fit when you come up and you have to work with us. Then we involve them right through the early periods for about 2 to 3 months of our training that they work with the experienced guys. So I'll have a schoolboy who's there. We've got a schoolboy who represents us in the fullback this weekend. He works with our top players. So he gets to feel what it is like to work with that player. What are the standards that he puts out there? How does he behave? How does he work? So he's not alien to him when he has to be thrown in once throughout the year. He's there and we've closed the gap. He can operate and we can perform quicker. What used to happen from some of the feedback I had with the club was they would be frustrated when academy players come in and they don't know the system and the training sessions and the plan and everything is getting mixed up in that. So to close the gap, you need to involve. It takes a lot of work, it's a lot of energy, but it is bloody worth it on every level. And the other real hidden or under the radar thing that the guys at the top didn't realise when I talked about this concept, when these young guys come in, they're bloody talented, they are good, they raise the competition. So the floor has been raised, which then the top has to get better. And that's really important. And we're in our third year at the Reds, and that's going to be a really interesting play out, how this plays out. I've got some young kids that are going to really put some challenge on some decisions I've got to make in selection. And then it comes down to that point. But essentially the close the gap philosophy or approach is getting more and more people ready to step into the breach. And then we don't have the deficit in performance or, the people not understanding how they fit in the organisation. That's important for us. We played the Wild Knights. For those who don't know, we had a Reds team that played the Wild Knights, which is a Japanese team, the top Japanese team in their league, coached by Robbie Deans. A number of Japanese internationals and a lot of foreigners who have played at the highest level. We put out a team with 2 schoolboys, 4 club guys, and another 4 people under the age of 20 against this team. When we got to our first training session a week out with this team, they came in and our training sessions within half an hour were humming. They were going brilliant because these young kids have already been closed the gap, part of the system. And we went out and our performance was superlative. We won 59 points to 19. We're 31-0 up at half time. And they just hummed. And that was, kudos to the coaches that work with those young guys and how we worked our system. Now, we've got to play them this weekend again, and they're not going to get bitten twice, so it's going to be a tough ask again. But we've got a couple of experienced guys back, and I'm hoping that those experienced guys that came back from the Australia A team that played in Japan last weekend, that they feel the heat of competition that's on them. And I've purposely selected a couple of these young boys in there to make sure that they feel that heat, not in a negative way, but in an inspiring way. This is coming, so I need to be better. And that close the gap philosophy, I think, helps on a number of levels, particularly that competitive area. But essentially, it does build to the whole thing that we all understand. I was saying, wherever we go, it'll take all of us. Not just part of us, it'll take all of us. And we use this hand signal. North is a key principle of ours, and it'll take all of us. And I think that's a powerful thing when you've got a young schoolboy that steps into the breach and he can challenge in a good, positive way. So our close the gap philosophy, I think, is paying dividends at the moment.
Yeah, great. I think that consistency is critical, isn't it? Whether it's in education, whether it's in sport, whether it's in juniors coming through the system in the same school program, and that consistency is great. We might open it up to the floor for any questions, if that's okay, because we could sit up here chatting for hours, I'm sure. But if anyone had a question, I'll run the microphone across to them.
I was just keen to understand, obviously you've got a wealth of knowledge between the three of you, and there's a lot of crossover from sport into business. You talked a lot about your support networks around you, your leaders. Kerry, you spoke about your analysts. And I suspect, like business and sport, a lot of your decisions are really data-driven decision-making. But again, you're not in your role because of your ability to just read data. I'd just love to understand, how do you balance data-driven decision-making with just your instincts and your gut, and maybe even when there's been a time when you've gone completely against the data, whether that's been on choosing a player with potential or a strategy or doing something that no one else is, and maybe where it's worked or maybe it hasn't worked, that instinct?
Generally, the question was geared around what part does data play? How deep does it go? How does it affect you? How do you navigate around the data? And do we work from instinct? How much do we take data in and those things? And it's becoming an interesting world. We've recently put on a high-level machine learning algorithmic. He's got that big right brain that sticks out like this. He's from QUT, and he's worked with us and worked with a lot of numbers and stats and algorithms in the way we're looking at our game. So we've got this challenge now, and there's a lot of people coming forward to me with AI programs and all these things. So it's a real challenging period at the moment. Stats, data, all the stuff we get in is massively important. However, it informs, but it doesn't decide. You mentioned an analyst before that was crucial to nothing to do with stats, just about the environment. But analysts are massively important in terms of how they operate with the data as well. Players will search out the data that supports their case, and that's natural. So you've got to be able to set a platform about what data or what message, numbers and measures that you have that are important. I've been in football teams where a coach will say, if you miss more than 10% of your tackles, you can't win. Mate, there's so many examples of that it's not true. So you can pull a number out and make it an absolute, but it's not. It's not, and we've got to be careful with numbers and the data that you pull out. But I do think there are ways, and it's all unique, and it's all quite bespoke to who your team is and how you work and how your game model works and all those things. Those things, you've got to pick out the right numbers. Now, that process is not just myself. In my book, I work with the analysts. I bring people in, my assistant coaches, and the leaders are starting to take a part in how they look at that as well. So it's important that we understand it, we use it wisely, but it should never, ever, I don't think, make the final decision. If the number is the decision I go with, the data makes it, it comes down to me and my support staff. So the data informs, as it should, but make sure it informs the right things for a start and what you're really after. but it doesn't decide. And that's the main thing, what you do. And also, I think the really critical thing with data is ensuring that the right stats that matter to us as a team are the ones that the players see, because they will search deep, and they could easily go off the sites and get each data, but make sure you get the right numbers that matter to us. The other thing that I find really interesting is controlling this is when you manage up as a head coach, you manage down, sideways and up. A lot of boards want to know missed tackle counts. They look at the wrong numbers too, so you've got to be very careful about how you build that understanding of what your data is. So it's dangerous, but it's also powerful used properly.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you explained it well, Les, in terms of you've got a style of play and you've got to look at data that replicates that. It's no use, for example, in our code, if a player is passing sideways and backwards and he's got 100% completion, but never once did he play forwards or beat one or two lines of defences, then it's of no use. But people say, yeah, he had 50 out of 50 passes, he was fantastic, but so what? So we were talking about data the other week, and we can measure physical data, we can measure football data, but one thing we don't measure is the mentality and the heart, and that you have to see. And that a lot of times is, you observe it, you see it from players. You can see there how emotionally connected they can be with something when they give everything, and I don't need to read the data to see how much they ran. You can see it. And on the weekend when we won, it was against all odds because we went down to 10 men and it became a lot more difficult and we had to keep the result. We were up 1-0. But what you saw was an emotional connection of 10 players together fighting for one another, and no data in the world will show what they actually did. Because let's say someone in Europe will look at it, they never saw the game and they'll say, yeah, they only had 350 passes. But what we saw, what they did for one another, data won't measure.
I don't really have anything to add, really, because the boys have covered it quite nicely. I think this is the beauty of being human, is that data tells you what, but it doesn't tell you how and why. And with AI upon us, it will throw out the numbers and it will try to predict stuff, but people are unpredictable. You're probably all in relationships, wives, husbands, all that, kids. They're so unpredictable. Like, they can turn up one day and day after day and do that thing, and then one day they'll go over there and do another thing. So I think data is great. It can help us inform patterns of behaviour, and that's what we use. I think for me, in terms of coaching, it generally reinforces what I'm seeing anyway. It's very, very rare. In fact, I cannot remember when I've actually gone, that's happening out there on the field, I'm not happy with that. I've looked at the data and gone, oh, actually, we're okay. That's never happened in 20 years of coaching, 30 years of coaching. So, yeah, it has its place, definitely has its place. My boss is here, my CEO's here. I find boards love data, but just like players can paint a picture, so can you. But they definitely, I think, the game model piece, you've heard that phrase quite a few times tonight. A game model is how you as a team, the Firebirds, the Raw, the Reds, it's how you are going to play the game. And there are measures around what that looks like, and that's important for the board, because that's how you know whether you are tracking despite not winning the championship, because as Les said, only one person can do it. So data has its uses, but it's not the be-all and end-all, and it never will be, because we're too complicated.
Can I open it up for one last question on the floor? So the question to the panel was, how do you manage a rogue like Reece Walsh that he obviously doesn't feel the pressure of the media. He obviously enjoys generating energy off the media, but how do you manage those players that are running to a different program?
Yeah, I won't try and pretend I know what happened within the Broncos this year. However, knowing Madge and the way that he runs a team, he had an idea where he wanted to take it, and one of the key things was what you said was hard work, and he had other key values and principles in play. And the truth is, Reece didn't have a great year until about 6 games out. And he grew into something. Now, there are some things that your locker room, as I said before, have to accept. Do you accept some things? I think what you've seen with Reece is a guy that is continually saying the right things. He wants to become a better person. He wants to represent himself, his family, and his mate and the jersey better, and it's perceived that way. And I think there's a young man trying to be that. I said it before, we're not perfect, and no one is perfect, but I do think leadership and the right environment and culture can help those young men find their way. We'd hate for a person like him not to be involved with the game, but what he can do. But I do think some of the things he said after the game, I want to be a better person. There was some of the quotes that he actually said he wants to go there. Maybe he didn't know how to do that beforehand. That's part of our job. That's part of who we are. Find a way for these guys to be better. It's one of the things we're thinking of success for 26 for the Reds. There's one thing that I'll leave is hopefully something that's really important, but I hope those guys become better men, better brothers, better fathers, or you know, people that they feel they become a better person. And I can see that happening there in the Broncos. There's a different, something's turned, the dial's turned because Madge has recalibrated some of the things why they're there for. And part of what I've seen with Reece, that's just from the outside. I haven't had a chance. I'm going to catch up with Madge before Christmas, but some of those things are about what the environment has offered and what it's demanded. And slowly but surely these things turn. Things don't happen straight away, but it is, you know, I have a principle in building I go home every day and I have a question I ask myself, and I'm going to ask this group here if I may. You've heard of the quote, you can lead a horse to water. Yeah, we've heard that. We know the response. I ask myself every night, I said, how good is the water? I don't point the finger at the player first. When I point, I always look at these first coming back at me. I say, is the water worth it? And it's not just on me, it's on all of us and what we've built. Make the water so compellingly good they want to be part of it. If they want to walk away, they can. But I'm not going to say, it's not on me. It is on me. I need to keep driving the culture and the way to say, I want them to understand what that water hole means to them, and they will look after it, and it's worth jumping into and being part of. So Madge has just shifted the dial of what that place means, and I can see the right things coming out in the place in terms of how they're responding. They won't be perfect yet, and they'll probably still cross the line, but good locker rooms, good places, allowing people to be human, as long as it doesn't, you know, break certain things that aren't right. Hopefully we all can help young men and women just make better choices. We have a little formula in our club, S, little O, Y, C. You're the sum of your choices. And a good environment should allow you to express where you are and find out where your choices, make strong choices on a daily way, every time that you can. So Reece, yeah, he's a rebel, he's a maverick, he's all those things, but I do think there's a young man trying to be better, and I just hope that the game itself can help him to become better every year that he can, or every game, every week, every day, every minute, you know what I mean? So,
yeah, no, brilliant.
Hope that made sense.
Michael and Kiri, anything with dealing with rogues that come into your team and how you channel their energy?
Yeah, look, everyone is different and everyone's got something to offer. And, you know, we've spoken about the environment. And the environment is that we all have a common goal to achieve something, but each individual also is aspiring to achieve something within that environment. And I think Les said it well in terms of we are also there to guide each individual as well, along with the team, to help them achieve their greatness and become great people, become great athletes, whatever it is. So it's part of the job. And sometimes it's challenging, but sometimes these guys also make the big difference. You know, they can really win your games, and it's all part of it in terms of managing them and helping them and getting them to be part of that path that we're going to make them great, whether it's on the field or off the field. Yeah, and sometimes, well, if you're not going to be getting the results, you're going to have to move people on, because that's part of the culture is people, the people you bring in. So
I actually got asked this last week as well, but the question that I was asked was more around the technical side of it. So how do you deal with someone unpredictable? So you've got a team that's quite structured, and you've got a structure, and you've got this guy that's going to come in and just do something totally unpredictable. On a totally different note, in terms of coaching someone like that and them fitting into a structure, you know when you're recruiting somebody like that they are going to bring a point of difference. And I feel in my sport, the structure is there to give players some awareness of where their mates are going to be at any given time on the pitch, so that they are prepared for and ready for somebody like Reece Walsh to come in and throw in their razzle dazzle and create something out of nothing that you're not expecting. And we deal with our workforce, or the people that we're in charge of, can be anywhere between the age of, maybe at the youngest for me is 18 right through to 30, and that's the period of time we're dealing with them. And we all know that there's huge growth in terms of learning, in terms of life experience over that period. So while I've talked a lot about people coming in that stick to those 4 values, they still have flexibility to be who they are, and we still have a responsibility as coaches to draw them in and help them to become the person that Reece clearly wants to be for his daughter, and things like that. Not easy having renegades like that in your team, but sometimes it's just worth hanging in there and helping them. And as long as I can see progress and intent to do well for the team and for themselves, I'm going to keep working with them.
Yeah, great response, Kiri. To have a panel like this where they've all represented their country in a particular sport and now gone on to high levels of coaching throughout their career, whether it be here or internationally, on all 3 fronts. I'd just like everyone to put their hands together and thank them for their time.